Hey, welcome back. And we're talking today, if we can, about creating models for yourself. Really didn't have a good idea what to call this, but the one of the things that enables you in your development is this idea of creating standards for yourself, having ideas, visual, picture-based ideas. And this is where Ang and Degas and all these guys are talking about the masters, paying attention to the masters. What is it in this form that we value? And I'm trying to get you all to think about what you value on your own, not because I want you to value it, but what do you value when you look at pictures? What is that thing that just keeps your interest, uh, provokes your love or your sense of value in terms of what this is as a work of art? And so it's kind of an interesting question. Uh, I was going to run through these values in, from scriptures or from every aspect of different character-related discussions. But the ideas of in yourself, how would you describe? Well, I'm saying in your child, what would you like your child to possess? What kind of qualities? And you can pre-see them. You're imaging the world, you're imagining the world, and you're seeing these values that you really value. These things you really value. You can do the same thing with painting, but I was just going to mention love. What you'd like to see is love with your kids, patience, kindness toward others, perseverance. Stay hanging in there, honesty, loyalty, thoughtfulness, mercy. You know the list. This is replete in all character discussions, right? And so I wanted to discuss something about pictures, not with those characteristics in mind, but what are the characteristics that you've perceived, that you yourself have found value in as you look at pictures of the sort we're trying to make. Before we start, just want to thank Stephen J. again for your recurring donation. That's really kind, Stephen. Thank you very much again. And I think I'm mentioning you 2 weeks in a row possibly here, and that's a good thing. So so I don't know. I have this list here. I guess I may as well show it to you. It's choosing everyday characteristics and standards. Everyday characteristics and standards. What I'm trying to say is, what do you want to be good at? Qualities do you want to always have in your work, right? So you can see I've talked about you'd like to always have your pictures have unity, not be bungled up messes, not be overcrowded. You want your pictures always to be interesting. I mean, these are things I'm guessing, These are things that you need to consider, though, not just these things. I'm just talking about things. But what is it when you look at pictures? And you should do this continually, especially as a young painter. You should be turning pictures over and over and say, I like that. What about that? What about that do I value enough to want to apprehend that skill? You follow where I'm going with that? So I have a few pictures I'll look at with you, but among other things, I valued once I saw it, once I understood it, a flat, even surface. I valued it even more when I realized how much it benefited the process, so that I wouldn't have struggles trying to paint, a beautiful fine line over a ridge of paint, things like that. But these are the kinds of things you begin with experience to have value for. Ang talks about the amount of paint. He's trying to convince his students how much paint they should use with those sorts of things in mind. But the Dutch had another reason, according to my training, to paint flat. That is to say, they believed in this invisible surface. They wanted the surface to be completely flat in that sense, not ridgy and apparent, something you would look at. You look right past the plane, right. So we say into the picture. Do you value that? When you're drawing, in terms of drawing, do you value proportions, gesture, form? And do you have a great sense of what form is? And do you value these things long enough to work? I mean, enough to work hard and long at them. Do you value good? Do you value good value relationships? Yeah, good spotting with two T's, good color schemes. Do you value that? Because what I'm trying to suggest to you is what you value, you can work on, and you can become good at. It's a one at a time kind of a thing. Most frequently, you learn something new. I mean, when I met edges, I suddenly realized there was a thing called edges that was a factor in the entire painting. I didn't know at the time how much of a factor it was. And but I began to wonder about that and to value it and to start painting with an awareness of edges. because I saw value. And so this is what I'm asking you. Can you on your own come up with things that you value? And my suggestion is entirely that. Look at pictures you like and say, what is it about that? Is that if I'm building a painter, that's me now, or else, or if you're building a child, and you're talking about character development, character creation, encouragement, whatever, what would it be? Well, that's you, right? So you're trying to make yourself into something. What would it look like? And I don't mean to say that you know what the end product would look like. I'm just saying, what do you value? I've often said every painter has something about it. I said you can learn something from anybody. I like that one. But every painter has something of specific value that sort of, you might say, belongs in your what's the word for that? Your toolbox, I guess, might be the best frame. Do you value truthful relationships of all kinds? Do you value paintings that don't look like the painter struggled? Doesn't mean the painter doesn't struggle, but that idea of providing a sense of ease so that at the end of the day, it looks like it was not done with struggle, but was actually blown on. The way a good performer might do on stage. You're watching a guy struggling, you're not going to be you're not going to enjoy it as much, right? Even though it's true, as Tarbell said, that he said I didn't like a painting where he couldn't see where the painter went a little wrong. That's a reasonable thing for somebody who's in the trade. Do you value not being fussy and little in your marks, broad, but rather to be broad and simple? These aren't things I'm telling you to value. I'm asking you to look at paintings and think through what are the values that you want to put into your paintings, and then that will give you something to work toward. Can you get good at that? At one point, I wanted to get a better sense of touch. I was doing charcoal drawing, and I just didn't like anything. Every mark I made looked like somebody clunked it on with a 2x4 or something. And I wanted to know something about the quality of a mark. And the most beautiful thing I saw was that was available to me was a Raphael with this beautiful red chalk. And I've got chalk. Actually, Mr. Gamble had a piece of Italian red chalk, had allowed me to slice off a chunk off this disc. And I sharpened it up, and it made the most beautiful marks. And I was able to finally, by practicing that, literally making a copy of his drawing, exactly the way it looked, exactly the way the marks looked. I began to get into my muscles, but also into my permanent sense of paint quality, the idea of touch, the idea of making a mark, a beautiful mark. Is that something you value? I'm just putting it out there. I'm not telling you what to value. I don't mean to be doing that. But you look at paintings for a reason, for a values-based reason. And I'm suggesting that you can find what they are, what those things are, that make pictures special, that make this guy in one area, in one way, something special. And in a sense, remember that comment that Raphael made, I want the color of Titian and the drawing of Michelangelo. Well, that's kind of what you're doing here. And we have such a nice pile of work in the museums now that you can look at such a broad range that you can say things like that. And you can actually go look at their work and find out how they did a certain thing. And, but yeah, so these are the questions, right? So in drawing, what do you value? I'm also looking, by the way, when I talk about this, looking for, in my mind, models, things that I hold up to myself and say, good drawing. And make sure that when you're drawing, the qualities that you admire in these drawings are there for you. It doesn't mean imitate Michelangelo or imitate Degas. It means, what are they doing? What are they doing that I need to be doing because I value it? You see what I'm saying? So if it's their sense of form, if it's their touch, it's their way. This is now just talking about drawing itself. One of you in the last set of comments was talking about that you're mostly into drawing right now. Well, there's so much value there. Form, proportions, gesture, coordinating the parts, coordinating the value relationships, even in a line drawing. This is all what's to value. Do you understand? So when you're copying or when you're drawing from nature, how much are you conveying in your relationships? And who does it well, and so on. I look at this other thing called sketching, and that's where, coming up with picture ideas or working on something that, scribble for, and I just call it, these two here, just one's Rembrandt and one on the right is Leighton. And I happen to like these guys' scribbles. when they're trying to come up with a figure grouping for a composition. And but what is it about that? You know, one of the things I liked about Rembrandt, I remember I've said before, when I first saw him, the first book I ever bought, two books were a couple paperbacks with Rembrandt drawings in them. And once I got into I think I was riding a bus. Once I got in the bus on my ride home, I was looking at these things thinking, I just wasted $5. You know, I got both books for $5. Big old things too. And because I thought it was so poor. And then later, as I looked through them, I realized, man, you could make paintings from these studies, from these sketches. Some of them were outdoor studies, apparently. I mean, just apparently done outdoors. It looks like Rembrandt stood outdoors and did some of these landscapes. But there's an efficiency in it in certain things. Look how few marks are being made. You know, look how the guy's making messes, a little bit of messy marks, and not being fine and little in his thinking. What's the value? You know, when you're sketching, what makes a good sketch? What was that Socrates said? He said he famously had his massive nose, and he said I have the most beautiful nose in all of whatever it was, Athens or whatever, and everybody was laughing at him, and he said, no, it is. I mean, what are noses for, after all? And he started describing that they're good for smelling and the big nostrils and all. You know, it goes on like this. But you understand, when you're sketching, what is sketching for? You know, you want to have a mobile line, and you want to find somebody who actually you can tell, you don't have to imitate their drawing. Don't do it like them, but learn things from them. Model yourself after some idea, some aspect of what they're doing. I'm talking to you younger guys who are the early phases of your training, and I'm suggesting that you can think this stuff through. The form idea here, I'm showing you how a guy like Leighton, who I don't know if anybody in that era could articulate form with such breadth. You know, the great forms of shall we say, on the leg here, with all the other junk going on, you know, all the little forms, but have this fantastic sense of the greater forms. Great sort of classic simplification, if that's the right word. It's all the details there. But the capacity of seeing the great forms and keeping them alive while you work through. But seeing great forms and managing great forms, this is the kind of thing you say, I'm looking at Leighton and that's what I value in him. That's me, right? That's one of the things I value. I value some other things about his compositions, and that he's a good composer. But so down here, you can see a Leighton here on the right, and on the left you can see a Joseph de Camp that might very well have been modeled on that Leighton. But in both cases, you can see the value of great forms. If you look at the de Camp, you can actually see the brilliance of the edge play, and wonder about that, and wonder if that's something you need to build into your system. Do you have to have solid understanding, so when that's needed, it's there for you. All these values I'm talking about, they aren't things you necessarily use every minute, but you never know when you're going to be needing them. And so do you have those skills? Do you have the ability to produce the great forms and to work from the great forms to the lesser forms? Well, you value it. You sort it out. You figure out what's best and what you value the most, but make sure it's based not on a sense that I can value whatever I want, but on what's touched you. And that's really a big deal, because anybody can perversely just grab something and say, I'm going to do this. But that's kind of not, is that really being true to yourself? That would be my question. But I am suggesting that there's a certain amount of self-evident rightness in pictures that you want to find and incorporate into your works. The values that are always there, like, for example, proportions. Now, you can say people exaggerate proportions, but they don't exaggerate so much that you lose the sense of the human. Or they don't have distortions in the form, unless they can't draw. And so you guys who like some of the modern guys can argue that. But let's talk about composition, though. Look at the Jerome. There's been a model of mine. I've often thought, there's probably nobody better schooled in composition than Jerome. And but Rubens is a fantastic draftsman. I mean, a composer, fantastic composer. And so I hold these guys up. They're significant models, but particular ones of their work, much more than the whole body. The whole body doesn't always impress me. I don't care who you're talking about, whether you're talking about Degas or three other guys. It doesn't make any difference. I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about that top level stuff, and I maintain these as like touchstones in my mind, or maybe that would be a good way of thinking about it. So, do you have models for yourself? And are you gradually improving your models of what good composition is? I used to collect postcards, I think I mentioned before, and I would get a new one. I thought, this is really a good composition. I'd bring it over here, and yes, it was better than this one. This one, I started throwing them away, but I found a better one, and I would limit the number to some number, like 20 or 30 postcards, and then I would gradually, the kind you can buy at the museums, I gradually put on a different stack all the ones that were falling away, and I could see my taste was getting better. So don't expect that not to happen too. Don't expect that expect that. Color schemes. Do you have concepts? Do you want color schemes in all of your work? Do you even know what a color scheme is? And that's another one of those things for you to think through. But one of the reasons you find people like Sargent or Degas or various people, you find copies from the museums of their work. Frequently, these copies are just color things. They're just colored blobs. You know what they were doing. They saw color relations that they liked, and they laid them down with the idea of saying yes to one of them. So, and copying a little bit is really helpful. It helps you to own the color scheme, and the idea of that's beautiful. You sort of get to touch it more by making a brief copy in a museum, very simple ones. This is a Degas on the left, and I don't know how well these are coming through the not as well as I'd hope by the look of it here. But that's Veronese. Gamble thought it was the great colorist. More down below, and then Degas, of course, on the left. So, and the subject of composition, you have this question of complexity. Sometimes there's something about a picture that creates that discussion. Is there such a thing as a picture with? What is is there a model? Is there an ideal one, or is there something a skill you need to have, though? The ability to put together a simple picture or a less simple picture, and have your unity be maintained and that sort of thing. So do you have models of pictures that have what you might call at least a sense of sort of the right complexity? I'm not telling you these things are absolute things. They're just ideas, okay? But you may have that in your own mind. Which one is the one you want to be good at? What skills should you have built into your system, so that when the time comes, you'll be able to say, oh, that picture is actually now busy as heck, and I need to know how to reduce it. The idea of light, and especially color-built light, the full color movements and all those sorts of things, those two kinds of ideas. You have Monet, de Camp, and on the right down below is a Vinton. Really beautiful interpretations of light. And thank somebody for breaking that. It's the best color version of the Blue Cup by de Camp that I've ever seen. Not sure how good the other ones are, but the holistic, full spectrum interpretation of nature that Monet does here. Are you a master of that? If so the time comes when that's the thing, or how much do you value that? So keep on remembering this. What you're doing is you're saying, I can do this, I can't do that. I can't do this, I can't do that. Now, which ones can I do? Which ones do I need to be able to do? That's based on what you value in work, and what you value mostly in building a painter. Paxton's comment once was, what you want to be able to do is hang up a sign that says painter, and it means you can do whatever is required. And that should include the categories, from painting a figure indoors and whatever light, and painting, and even to a degree, painting imaginative work versus impressionist work, although that's not an essential thing. And then I'll just mention one last thing, and that is the idea of visual order. It's just the relationships thing. Have you tuned your eye? Is it important to you to actually grasp how things interplay and have the capacity to make the interplay of effects in a picture to the extent that they play the way nature plays? So anyway, in all these things, I'm not telling you a particular thing. I am telling you a lot of particular things, but I'm saying, what do you value? Build yourself a painter model. And you want a painter that's capable of anything. And I do mean that when I was talking about Paxton before. A painter who's capable of rendering a beautiful impressionist light, or of creating a mural. It's a very different game. right? So sort of the full complement of skills that you see in a person like Sargent. So anyway, just thought provoking. I'm hoping, and so I hope you young guys might take an opportunity and start understanding what you're doing. You're actually planning a painter. And then what you're going to next follow up with is you're going to practice the stuff that it would take to make that painter. So it's one of my students is a hockey player, and I'm thinking, what kind of practice did it take to learn how to get into the right position all the time, to be in the right position? Never mind how to shoot the shot right. Never mind how to defend, another skater. So each one of these things is a value, and I've seen that in sports where guys value making baskets, but they don't value playing defense. You learned it at the tops of the end of this thing. You learned that you have to value everything. And so, what does that look like? What is your concept of a good representational painter of the type you're sort of largely inspired by? And what are the qualities you would like to build into the one you're building? So, with that in mind, I better get out of here. I think I'm going run a little bit long. No, it actually has been pretty good. So I think, Mr. Producer, you should be happy, Mr. Producer. Tell me you're happy. So, yeah, I hope that comes across. I don't mean to be doctrinaire about any of these things. You got to create your own set of values. You got to look at nature. You got to be in love. And this is one of those places where it's the complement of skills that we have to build from is other painters. This is the one place where mastery is mastery of getting the look of nature better. Can be done in many ways, but we have this body of other men that have skills that we're also building on for our craft, and this is stuff of the craft. Okay, so some days we talk about that. Some days we talk more about the visual impression, and this is just another piece of the game, piece of the puzzle. All right, I hope that means something to you, and maybe it's helpful in some way. All right, and look forward to see you in the next one. Thank you again, Stephen. I think I've mentioned you twice in a row, and that's a good thing. So, all right, I think I will be out of here, and we'll thank you all for your donations, for your conversation, for sharing, for liking, for particularly for subscribing. And we don't have any plans for weeks out yet because of the plans of Mr. Producer here. And I am hoping I don't wind up with just having to send you some blogs, but that may happen in the course of the next 3 weeks. So with the activities that draw my Mr. Producer away. So we'll see what happens. But in the meantime, just have a great week or several weeks, and we'll see you as soon as we can. All right, great. See ya.